want to begin by talking about schizophrenia, in part because it's the most important and most terrible of all mental illnesses. By some estimates, about 1% of the world's population suffer from schizophrenia, but about half the beds in mental hospitals are occupied by schizophrenics. It is a terrible, devastating illness, and the people with schizophrenia have been described as the lepers of the 20th century. This was written a little while ago. They are rejected and shunned by society. To get an understanding of it, the first thing you have to realize is it's not split personality. It's not multiple personalities. That's another disorder, a type of dissociative disorder we'll talk about later. People think it means that because of the root of the word. It comes from the Greek words meaning split and mind. But the split refers to a loss of touch with reality. And before getting into the details of schizophrenia, here's a wonderful depiction from the movie The Soloist, in which Jamie Foxx plays a schizophrenic.
Stevie Wonder fan?
Oh, my Cherie Moore, Sunshine in My Life.
Signed, sealed, delivered.
But you really shouldn't write on a violin like that because you have to treat a violin like a child. You have to protect it.
You only got 2 strings.
All I want to do is play music, and here's a problem that I'm having right here. This one's gone, this little one's out of commission. But you get that in Cleveland public schools. A lot of military statues in Cleveland, very military-oriented city. You're not going to get musicians on parade there. You got Servants Hall there. You have the music settlement, Ohio State University, whereas in Los Angeles you have Los Angeles PD, you have LA Times, you have Los Angeles Lakers. Those are armies too. Military regimentation, experimentation, Roman Gabriel, Roman Catholicism, Colonel Sanders. But this guy right here is the quarterback of the orchestra. Now the cello can back this guy with the same moves, but the cello can't be concert master. No, he leads out. This is just Doc Perlman, Joshua Heifetz. You can't play music in the winter in Cleveland because of the ice and the snow. That's why I prefer Los Angeles to Beethoven City, because it never rains in Southern California. And if it does, all I have to do is just go in the tunnel. I can play to my heart's content. I'm flabbergasted about the statue. Aren't you flabbergasted about this?
Anyway, nice to meet you.
You have any idea how it got here?
No.
Maybe they dropped it off late at night, because it's just astonishing to sit here for hours and just gaze at it. It just blows me away. It really blows me away that someone as great as Beethoven is a leader in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I'm Steve Lopez, LA Times.
Lopez, L-O-P-E-Z?
Yeah.
Lopez. Los Angeles Times, Mr. Lopez.
What's your name?
Lopez. Nathaniel Anthony Ayers Jr., N-A-T-H-A-N-I-E-L-A-N-T-H-O-N-Y-A-Y-E-R-S-J-U-N-I-O-R. Or J-R period. I apologize for my appearance. I've had a few setbacks.
Me too. Who are Nancy, Paul, and Craig?
Those are my classmates at Juilliard.
So here are the symptoms of schizophrenia. And to be diagnosed as having schizophrenia, among other things, you have to have at least 2 of these. So there are positive symptoms, and positive means things that you do, things that happen to you, ways in which you're different. These include hallucinations, where you experience things which don't really happen. Typically they're auditory, they're sounds, so you might hear voices. You might hear voices from God, or from the devil, or from relatives, or from people, sinister people asking you to do terrible things. A second symptom is a delusion. And a delusion is different from hallucination. Hallucination is a sensory experience that didn't really happen. A delusion is an irrational belief. So you might believe, for instance, that you're Jesus Christ. If you're Christian, one way a schizophrenia might manifest itself in believing that you're Christ. Often the delusions are what they call delusions of reference, where you have certain structured beliefs that circle around you. Maybe the government is tracking you, or aliens are trying to recruit you. There's something gone wrong in the world, and it might manifest itself in some sort of paranoid feelings or disturbed feelings that are based on you getting a lot of attention, a lot of focus. Perhaps, for instance, you might believe that people are reading your mind. There is disorganized speech or word salad, often schizophrenic sort of garble, and disorganized behavior, which is a polite word for odd behavior, for doing weird things. There's also negative symptoms, which involve an absence of cognition or affect, where people become emotionless, their emotions are dulled, they don't talk, they don't move. In the most extreme case of catatonic schizophrenia, they may just be perfectly still and not even move at all. And there are different subtypes. These are not all of them, but this will give you a flavor of this, which is that there's paranoid schizophrenia. And paranoid schizophrenia may well be what people think about when we think about schizophrenics, which is you might have delusions of persecution and some delusion of grandeur, that others are jealous of you, they're inferior, you have super and special powers. As I mentioned before, there's catatonic schizophrenia, you're just kind of frozen. There's disorganized schizophrenia, just a general breakdown of regular thought without much of a focus. You have delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech and behavior, and flat affect. And then there's undifferentiated type, which is kind of where hard to classify aspects of schizophrenia. So you might wonder, what's wrong with schizophrenia? What do all of these things have in common? And, the basic malfunction might well be an inability to sequence and coordinate your thoughts, to get your head together. And essentially, this leads to a certain unfortunate effect, is you lose contact with others. So this original split in your mind, your inability to reason, makes it difficult to deal with others. And then because you can't deal with others, your disorder gets worse. This is a sort of typical vicious circle one finds in mental illnesses. And in fact, a lot of delusions and hallucinations may well be seen as an elaboration of the private world of a person who's lost contact with other people and is also having a difficulty distinguishing fantasy and reality. What causes this sort of neural malfunction, this malfunction in thinking? Well, there's some evidence it could be due to too much dopamine. And in fact, studies of schizophrenia find abnormally high dopamine activity. And one reason to believe this is that antipsychotic drugs have some effect, some beneficial effect with schizophrenia, and they work by blocking dopamine reception at the synapse, so dopamine doesn't work as well. It's also supported by the fact that if someone who's not schizophrenic takes a lot of amphetamines, you sometimes get amphetamine psychosis, which is a lot like schizophrenia. But this is a sort of a crude theory of schizophrenia. Nobody believes it in the simple form I'm giving. For one thing, antipsychotic drugs, if it was really caused by an excess of dopamine, antipsychotic drugs should work for everybody, but they don't. For another, there's structural abnormalities in the brains that can't be accounted for by this dopamine hypothesis. There's been a lot of studies on the heritability of schizophrenia, and as you'll see here, there's a powerful role of genetics. To the extent a close biological relative has schizophrenia, you're increasingly likely to have it yourself. In fact, if your identical twin has it, you're about 50% likely to have it. But notice the numbers are not 100%. So if it was entirely genetic, then if your twin had it, you would have it too, and you don't. So there has to be some sort of environmental triggers so that one person has it and another doesn't. And there are different hypotheses about what these triggers could be. It could be even very early in life, a difficult birth, or some potential viral infections. It's argued that more schizophrenics are born in the winter than in the summer. And then later in life, it may be due to stress-producing circumstances or difficult family environment. And in fact, schizophrenics report more of these than non-schizophrenics. But it's a complicated problem to determine cause and effect here. For instance, it might be that schizophrenics early on are showing schizophrenic symptoms, which leads to more difficulties in the families or more stressful environments. It also might mean that people who know they have mental illnesses are more prone to remember bad events. So as always, figuring out cause and effect, figuring out what is the consequence of a disorder and what is the cause of a disorder and what's merely related to disorder are very difficult indeed.